Hi, welcome to our channel. If you are looking for fascinating stories, exciting reviews, and useful tips, you have come to the right place. We are here to make your time interesting and unforgettable. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any new videos. Click on the bell to receive notifications about the latest releases, and like it if you like what we do. Your participation and support are very important to us, and we look forward to seeing you in our community. Leave comments, share your impressions, and of course, stay with us. Thanks for stopping by, and see you in the next video. In a small, remote village where the nights were long and foggy and the forests were dense and gloomy, there was an old mansion, once proud and majestic. This mansion, known to locals as the Taylor House, was built in the early 20th century and has long been the object of local legends and fears. Michael and Lisa, a young couple who had recently moved to the village, were full of enthusiasm. They bought a house at a very good price and decided that this was a great opportunity to start a new life. The building itself needed repairs, but they didn't pay attention to it, hoping that everything would be put in order soon. From the very beginning, the nights in the house were strange. As the work progressed, Michael and Lisa began to notice small but eerie details, vague whispers, strange shadows that moved in corners, and vague figures that seemed frozen in the semi-darkness. But they tried to ignore these oddities, thinking that they were just the consequences of a long move and stress. One night, when Michael was working in the basement, he found an old, dusty chest. Inside, he found old documents and family photographs. These documents belonged to the Taylor family, the former owners of the house, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances many years ago. The photos showed people Michael didn't know, but their eyes were anxious and gloomy. Michael showed the find to Lisa, and they decided to explore the history of the Taylor family. In the local library, they found dusty books and newspapers that mentioned that the family was known for its strange and frightening customs related to occult practice. People claimed that creepy rituals took place in the house and that evil lived in this place. As Michael and Lisa delved deeper into the research, the oddities in the house became more and more obvious. They started to hear thuds, as if someone was trying to get into their bedroom. Lisa noticed that her mirrors began to be covered with fog, on which words and symbols that she could not explain regularly appeared. One night, in the midst of a severe thunderstorm, Michael was awakened by a terrible scream. He found Lisa in a state of complete terror, sitting on the bed and pointing at an empty wall. Where previously there had been only a white wall, a scene full of horror was now depicted. People in antique clothes, their faces twisted into terrible grimaces, and fear and suffering were visible in their eyes. Michael and Lisa felt that the house had become even more sinister after they discovered the gruesome images on the wall. With each subsequent night, the tension increased. Strange events and unexplained phenomena have become their constant companions. The walls seemed to hide terrible secrets that were trying to break out. One night, when the rain was pouring down in buckets and the wind was howling, Michael woke up to a sound like a heavy metal knock. He got up and went to check what was going on, and found that the sound was coming from the basement. He went down the creaking stairs and saw that the doors of the old basement were ajar. The sounds became louder and sharper. Having barely made his way inside, Michael saw strange metal structures hanging from the ceiling. They were long, rusty chains that were riveted to the ceiling and lost in the darkness. Michael turned on the flashlight and saw that one of the chains seemed to have been twisted recently, and there was a strange object hanging under it. It was something like a mannequin, but with distorted, creepy features, covered with strange and scary notes. He looked at this creepy structure in shock, but suddenly there was a screeching sound behind him. Turning around, Michael noticed that the basement doors had started to close by themselves, and he felt his heart beat faster. In a panic, Michael tried to open the doors. They were locked. There were soft but distinct footsteps in the room, as if someone was watching him. The feeling that someone invisible was hiding in the shadows became more and more obvious. Michael didn't know what to do, and his fear was so great that he could hardly think straight. He took some antique items and started to break down the doors, but when he was almost out, he heard a strange sound. It was a sound like someone was moving in the depths of the basement. Michael felt something moving in the shadows. Soon, when the doors opened with difficulty, he noticed that the room was not the same as he had left it. The chains and mannequins were gone, and the basement looked like a completely different, more ancient and gloomy place. Rushing back to the bedroom, Michael found that Lisa had already woken up and was waiting for him. There was a fear on her face that she couldn't hide. She pointed to the floor, and Michael saw that strange and creepy signs began to appear on the floor, all over the room, as if someone had torn them off the walls. They tried to leave the house, but as soon as they went outside, they were met with an even scarier surprise. There were bloody footprints in the clearing in front of the house, leading to the trees. These footprints disappeared into the dense forest, which seemed to envelop them in an increasingly dense darkness. They, terrified and shrouded in fear, went into the forest, where they came across a terrible sight. Bodies suspended from trees, ancient and deformed, swaying in the wind. These bodies were tied with antique ropes and chains that looked eerily realistic. Michael and Lisa tried to escape, but the forest seemed to be alive and constantly changing. The paths disappeared, and their path became more and more confusing. The sound of their own footsteps and whispers, which echoed from all directions, became increasingly intrusive and scary. They felt that someone was following them, and soon they began to see shadows moving among the trees, as if they were being chased by someone. Finally, after hours of fruitless struggle, they found themselves in the middle of the forest, in a place that looked like a creepy ritual circle. In the center of the circle stood an old altar, on which strange symbols and objects filled with blood were laid out. It was a place where terrible rituals were held, and it still retained traces of those who once suffered. Michael and Lisa, in complete horror, began to scream and pray for help, but their screams were swallowed up by the silence of the forest. Suddenly, they felt the ground beneath them begin to shake. Vague distortions began to appear directly from the ground, as if its surface was being torn apart, and unknown entities were bursting out of the ground. These entities were shadows with human features, but with withered, disfigured faces. Silhouettes began to approach them, and fear overwhelmed them. Lisa, unable to stand it any longer, fell to her knees and began to scream. Her scream was so piercing that it seemed as if the forest itself responded to it. The consequences of their night in the woods were disastrous. Michael and Lisa disappeared, and their bodies were never found. The village returned to normal life, but residents said that at night you can hear screams in the forest and see shadows gliding among the trees. The mansion itself remained empty and abandoned. Some locals claim that they saw Michael and Lisa in their dreams. These dreams were filled with terrifying visions. The pale silhouettes of Michael and Lisa roamed the streets of the village, their faces distorted by torment. They were always looking for someone and, as if begging for help, tried to warn of impending evil. Everyone who saw them in their dreams described a feeling of inevitable horror and fear, as if Michael and Lisa themselves, or their damned shadows, were trying to envelop them with their darkness.